Thank you for coming on the show.
Hey, thanks for having me. This is great.
Yeah. Are you still in Canada?
I am, and no, we're not supplying you with all your fentanyl.
No, no, no. That's our other border. I never thought it was coming from you guys.
I know
Yeah.
it's an industry that both you and I understand.
Yeah. Well, and why is that? Like I read your bio and songwriter and finance person. So how has that crossed your path?
So, what happened to me was when I was 12 years old, my dad died, and we lived in a small town. It was a small town in the north, and Angie, I didn't it traumatized me. Like I just didn't deal with it. I actually kept him alive for 2 years. I
Wow.
pretended that he was a spy for the government and that they
Oh,
had to say that he was dead to protect his family while he went off and saved the world. So what happened was my mom moved us from that small town to a city so that she could get a job. She was in her mid 30s and she had six kids. And
six
all
kids?
six kids, and all of a sudden
Wow.
she's a widow with
Yeah.
no income. She hadn't worked since high school or college, and so she told me years later the reason that she brought us to the city was so that she could keep us off welfare and together, right? They
Mm.
had a
Hmm.
better chance of doing that in a small in a city than a small town.
Makes
So
sense.
she moved us to the city, but I was still traumatized, and so the city kind of swallowed me up and spit me out. I
Yeah.
started I started using drugs to cope, and I was doing some version of a mind altering substance every single day by the end of my 12th year, and reckless behavior. And all the women listening to this podcast know what reckless behavior was. And this was before my 13th birthday. I
Yeah,
mean, my
and
mom.
that's such a vulnerable time as a preteen, like that, those middle school years. My gosh, they're hard to deal with alone with the hormones and everything going peer pressure. But to be in a new school and dealing with what you were doing, I can only imagine.
Oh, and it was just like my mom was like coming home from work, putting one foot in front of the other, exhausted. She'd have supper with us, go to bed and cry herself to sleep. She just lost her soulmate. And I'd
Mm,
sneak out, hitchhike to a seedier part of the city, get stoned with older kids, and then at 2 o'clock in the morning, I'd hitchhike back home.
yeah. Does she have
I
any
know,
idea, or she was just out? She had no
not a
clue
clue,
you were even
not a
doing it.
clue. No,
Yeah.
I think she found out when she read my book.
Hopefully you prepared her for that.
And she's 94 and she's just so amazing. She's so, so sweet.
Oh, wow.
She's just a really positive and good person. And so, yeah, I think she pretty much knew that I had she was in my life my whole life. And,
Yeah.
the people that love addicts, I have such a soft spot in my heart for the people that love addicts because their journey is a challenge.
Yeah.
I mean, the addict has their challenges, but one of the songs that I wrote is called Wings.
Mm.
And if you decide to listen to it and watch the video, make sure you're alone and have a Kleenex box.
Oh, one
if
of
this
those.
yeah, yeah, and if this topic is in your life,
Mhm.
because what the message I'm trying to give is for the loved ones to give themselves permission to be happy, to enjoy their lives, right?
Yeah.
Like you're running a parallel journey with your addict. And it's, yeah, you love them and you want to be there for them, but worrying and getting anxiety and stressing out is just going to put you in that whole codependent state of mind. And
Yeah.
when they're ready for your help, that's what I say, go live your life. I mean, you still have them in your life, but live your life, be happy, be strong. Then when they're ready to get help, you can be their advocate. You could be there for you because you didn't let their disease take you down.
Yeah. I love that you say that because I really do think that the fear creates the perpetuation of addiction, because parents and loved ones will do anything to prevent like harmful consequences that they're seeing happening, because it hurts them to see their loved one in pain. And so if they have a family member always bailing them out and they don't have personal boundaries themselves, it almost extends that addiction, because what they need is for people to say, I love you, but I'm going to be over here. When you're ready, let me know. And
Yeah.
that's so hard for somebody to do when they're closely attached to somebody with addiction.
Well, and absolutely it what you just said about it extending their addiction. And if the person realizes that, then they have a better chance of being able to put those boundaries in place because, oh, I'm not helping the addicts by giving them, making it easy. But I know that journey too because my son is
Mm,
a recovering addict. And what happened was when he was 12 years old, and I was still in active addiction, but I was a functioning addict at the time. And so I moved him across the country, brought a new man into his life, a new
mm.
school, all the things that happened to me, I did to him without being clued into it. And he went down the exact same path. And so that was my second bottom. And when I hit bottom that time, it was I stopped taking mind altering substances on a daily basis because I wanted to help him. And I'm there, how am I going to help this kid? And I started reading all these books about addiction and went, oh, you're an addict. Like, honest to God, Angie, that's how clued, well, we know how strong denial is, how strong of a
Yeah.
hold it is, but I was clued right out. I actually was clued right out because I
Especially
was
when you're functional, you're holding down a job, you're keeping your responsibilities in your mind. You're like as justified as you could be. You're not like everybody else. You got it together.
You got it 100%. That's exactly what I was doing, right? That's
Yeah.
exactly what I was doing. And
Mm.
then, and actually, what this was interesting. One of the books I bought when I started to say, what? I think you got a problem, girl. And I
Uh-huh.
started reading this book. I bought this book that said, are you an alcoholic? And it had a
Mm.
quiz in it. And the quiz, all the questions had nothing to do with how much you drank. The questions were questions like, do you go to social events where there's no alcohol? And I'm there like, no, why would I do that?
Is there such a thing?
Yeah, yeah, like no, that never dawned on me to do that. And then other questions like, do you design your activities around your alcohol use? Like an example that came to my mind is if I was flying my mom to come and visit me, I would make sure that her flight lands before 4 o'clock, right? Because I can't go pick her up at the airport at 7 or 8 at night. I've already had a few drinks by then.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So without even consciously realizing I was doing it, when they were asking these questions, I thought, oh yeah, I do that. Oh yeah, I
Which is
do.
so funny, because like when I hear it, it's like, oh, you're being responsible. You're like, you're not going to drive drunk. So, and I can see how that plays in your mind as far as justifying your behavior, because it feels like you're doing the right thing by not planning later so you're not drink driving. Not like maybe don't drink so that doesn't matter what time they come in.
Yeah, you had it. You had it. And
Yeah.
then one time I went to rehab, they were having a family thing, and I went when my child was there, and I asked them, how come I didn't have to go to rehab and
Mm.
or detox or anything, uh, or even any programs? And he said, because you did what we call hitting a high bottom.
Mm.
And so I thought that was interesting and unfortunate because you can live in that state for your whole life. And like a lot of people do, a lot of people are functioning alcoholics that don't know they're alcoholics. But man, without using a mind altering substance every day, life is so powerful. Like I
Yeah.
love life. I'm on a natural high and I have been for years. And like to me, oh my God, I'd like to see everybody experience that.
Yeah. What a blessing. I mean, it's unfortunate that your son went through what he went through, but because he went through what he went through, it helped you get to that place where maybe you never would have had he not gone down that path.
Maybe, but I wouldn't wish that I don't wish this on anybody, a complete stranger, let alone my son. He actually got into opioids
Oh,
and
yeah.
big time. And we that's how I learned. And I do a chapter in the book where I talk about everything from boundaries to enabling to codependency to keeping yourself healthy. And for those out there that are listening to this, what the call's like. Depending on the person, the call would be, "Hi, mom, I love you. Can I have some money?" No,
Mhm.
you can't. And then the verbal abuse got darn right scary,
Yeah.
right? So and I have his permission to share our story. He's been in recovery for quite a few years, and he's one of my
Mhm.
best friends, and he's such
Mm.
a nice person. And so like we talk about it, and we both agree that if he was still out there, he wouldn't be alive.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
the
Opiates are no joke. That is literally Russian roulette every time you use.
Yeah, it is absolutely. Like I was just looking at the stats on it, and in your country in 2023, you guys lost over 100,000 people.
Yeah.
No, we lost over six, and that's a big number. Like we're typically about 10% of you. So, in that year, we happen to be a little lower than our 10%, but not much.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
that's like over half of those people are between the ages of 20 and 39. So, this is really, really scary stuff. Young people are losing their lives, and they shouldn't be. It's so unfortunate what we're going through now.
Yeah, well, and it's me and my team. We talk a lot, like because we've all been in recovery for so long. A lot of us, and it's like, had this fentanyl been out when we were out in our heyday, most of us are like, we're not sure we would have made it out of it because so many times the way they're lacing it in other drugs, you don't even know that you're taking it. And then when you figure it out, you're addicted. And then as we've seen, it just takes like the tiniest drop like smaller than a pencil point to kill you. It's not even an overdose; it's a poisoning. It's a opioid poisoning. So we all feel very fortunate that we made it out. But for the kids and growing up in this generation, and I say kids, like you said, it's 20 to 40 to 60. I mean, for the people going through it now, it is terrifying to see what they're going through. There's no more like, oh, let's experiment and have fun, rave drugs or whatever as a teenager. Like that world is kind of gone. They're literally playing with their lives every time they just try something fun from a friend.
Oh, I know, and it was explained to me once that some of the pill mills, that I guess the cartels, whoever has the pill mills,
Hmm.
that they build the pills, they make them look exactly like pharmaceuticals. So
Hmm.
you can't even tell you're taking a street drug because you get some young college kids that I want to get high, but I don't want to do a street drug. I'll do a pharmaceutical, same thing. It's an
Yeah.
opioid. So yeah, they don't even always know the difference.
Right, right. Like you said, they disguise it. They think they're taking Adderall so they can stay up all night and do their finals. And lo and behold, it's not Adderall. Or if it is, it's laced with fentanyl and done. Yeah.
I know that is so scary.
Yeah. Yeah. But it's interesting when we look at like the difference. So in prior to 2020, our demographic was 51% was every other kind of drug combined, pharmaceuticals, meth, coke, weed, whatever. And 49% was alcohol. Now, fast forward 4 or 5 years, and our predominant drug of choice, 80% is alcohol. So you have fentanyl, which is the obvious, like nobody should take anything. They don't know what it is. Don't take things from strangers. You could die. Like, I think there is some awareness there, but then you have that silent killer. That's that slow death that people aren't realizing have crept into their lives and become very prominent, at least over here in the United States. I'm not sure what that looks like over in Canada, but in the US, that's our biggest demographic is the alcohol.
Right, and I don't know ours. I'm guessing it's not that different. I was in the 60s and the 70s, so it was like MDA, magic mushrooms, acid.
The
And then
hallucinogens, yeah.
yeah, and we smoked, right? We smoked weed and hash oil every day. When I moved across the country, I was in my early 30s. This is where I shared with you I had already hit a bottom, and I'll tell you about that in a second. But when I moved across the country and left all that behind, alcohol ended up being 80% and weed the rest because I didn't have any dealers out here, but I didn't know I was an addict. So
Yeah.
I didn't think anything of moving across the country because I didn't realize I had a problem. And so
Mm.
when I moved across the country, I ended up replacing the drugs with alcohol. And so, in the last 10 years, alcohol and I bounced off and on it, off and on it, did end up being my drug of choice just by default. And
Yep.
because it was a mainstream drug, it was legal. I was in the finance industry. Nobody cared.
Yeah, it's not only legal, it's expected. Like, like you said, every social event, every occasion, every somber occasion, every happy occasion, like alcohol is just hand in hand with everything. And it's so socially accepted and expected.
Well, and I listened to one of your previous podcasts, and the gentleman, I think his name was Brandon. Did you
Mm.
interview Brandon recently?
Hmm. Yeah, he was
I
one of
think
my
it
staff members. Yeah.
Okay, I think he said something about, uh, how do you say no thanks? And I found that if I didn't want to share my story, I mean, there's still a stigma. People in certain professions don't want to own it. They want to stay private about it. And I think that's okay. I think that's your choice. I always say there's a difference, though, between being private and being secretive because
Mm.
there's a reason why they say you're only as sick as your best kept secret. Like that's a different uh story. If it comes out, it comes out. But what I used to just say is, yeah, I don't drink because I find that I have more energy to do all the things I want to do in life when I don't drink. And so, yeah, I never drink. And I found people accepted that with no problem.
Yeah.
But
Well, and
they
it's absolutely the truth because alcohol is a depressant. So it's not even a lie. It is true.
Yeah, yeah, and the odd time I'd have someone say, "Well, can't you even have a couple glasses of wine?" And I'm there, "Nah, I made the choice, it's none." And, if I really had to go into it, then I would tell the person, but, for years, that's all I just said. I just said, "Yeah, no, I have more energy without alcohol in my life, and I got
Yeah,
too much to do. I wanna keep that bounce in my step." And I found that. Um, One of
that's
the
smart.
things that, like you asked me at the beginning of the call, I'd kind of like to share this story with you because one of the messages that I like to share with recovering addicts is that the sky's the limit. Just
Mm.
because you missed a beat doesn't mean that you can't go after whatever dream it is that you want to create in your life, whatever career, whatever job. Like, you don't have to say, oh, yeah, well, because I'm in recovery, I can't shoot for the stars because I think you can. I
I
think
think even more so, because like you said, you have that clarity, that pep in your step, that, strength to do whatever without contending with either the secrets or the hangovers or all the other things. I find that people in recovery are actually super dynamic because they overcame addiction and now they have all that hustle and all the other stuff that used to be devoted to this other thing that now they can focus on the good things.
100%. 100%. And what
Yeah.
happened to me was I had these two different points in my life. So that first time I hit bottom, like I woke up in my, I don't know, let's say early to mid 20s. So a good 10 years into it.
Mm.
And like I looked around at the mess I made, and it wasn't just in the room, it was in my soul. And
Oh,
I thought, yeah, there's got to be more to life than this. I got to be able to pull myself out of this rut. And just that little bit of hope, that's all, that little bit of hope changed the whole trajectory of my life. I started reading books. I started with Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill.
Mm.
Everybody's read it or heard of it. I mean,
Hmm.
rich to him didn't mean money, because it could have been, you want to be rich in a career or in a cause or in a family, but to me, still a dysfunctional 20-something-year-old, it meant money. So I
Hmm.
decided to go after, how did the wealthy get wealthy? And I just decided to go after business success. And then I did become a financial advisor for 25 years. And I
Wow.
loved it. And I was clean for a lot of it, for, the last half of it. There were points where I bounced in and out. 2 years of no drinking, 6 months of drinking, a year of no drinking. I mean, we know that relapse is part of the disease. And because I was a functional part in a functional point, yeah, I actually relapsed more than I would recommend anybody ever do.
Yeah.
And so then when I was 58, I started taking piano lessons, and I had no music in
Mm.
my background, Angie, none whatsoever. And so,
Really?
I'm learning scales, everything's from scratch, and oh my God, I fell in love with it. So
Which it kind of makes sense because isn't it that is it's almost like mathematical, like the
it is.
scales and all that kind of stuff. So maybe there's that translation worked well for you because of your finance.
I love that you said that, because everybody says the opposite. They said, "How can you go to finance to
Ah,
music?" And I say, "Music is math."
yeah.
And you have to be creative to run a financial business, believe me. And so and so after a couple of years, I said to my husband, I'm going to retire earlier than I had planned, sell my practice, and study music full time. And so I
Wow.
did that at 61. And I'm studying with private teachers and local university. Berkeley, I studied with Berkeley School of Music out there in
Wow.
California, because you can study online with them and you don't have to audition. I didn't
Wow.
have to have any talent. I just had to have money. And I had amazing teachers, man. I took bass guitar, I took
Wow.
keyboards, I took songwriting, ear training, the whole gamut. And so after
Wow.
a couple of years of that, I thought, I'm going to reinvent myself as a musician. And when I
Amazing.
shared that story with folks, I kept getting the same reaction. I kept getting, "Oh, Gail, that's so inspiring. I'm gonna go do bitty bitty," something they put on the back burner.
Yeah.
And I heard that so often, Angie, that I thought, whoa, I'm not going to become a musician. I'm coming out of retirement. I'm going to start up Gail Taylor Music, become a keynote speaker, and share my story and all the tools that I've learned from studying personal growth for 40 years to help people live their best life. And
Mm.
so that's how I ended up here and in this conversation with you. And when I talked to an entertainment lawyer about it, and I said, I'm setting everything up, he says, well, if that's the route you want to take, write a book. So
Mm.
that's where the book comes in. So I wrote Curveballs. And I mean, to me, it's not the curveballs that life throws at you, it's what you do with them.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like that old saying, like when life throws you lemons, you make lemonade. It's like,
I
okay,
did.
how do I make this the best of a bad situation?
Exactly, exactly. And turned out songwriting was my superpower because I talk so
Mm.
much. My songs are just stories turned into lyrics, right?
Yeah.
So what I did with the book was I tell a personal story, a curveball that life threw at me, and I've just shared some of them. Then the tools that I learned and that helped me get out of it. And then
Yeah.
at the end of the chapter, I put a QR code so that you could go listen to the song and the video, and that was inspired by the story I just told you.
That's amazing. And what a beautiful reincarnation of yourself into something beautiful that you're sharing with others. Not that finance, there's a place for it, obviously, but to follow your heart and try something new, that is phenomenal. It reminds me of my COO. He we always talk about pushing ourselves outside our comfort zones. And he, for some unknown reason, because he got inspired by his son who's in high school starting to take music, he went to our community college, and he doesn't know why he did it, but he signed up for Latin fused jazz. And he's like, I don't know what
Nice.
I'm doing in here, but I'm here. And he's just doing it and learning it and finding the joy in that and doing something new, doing something different, doing something outside the routine of what we're really good at or all we know. That's
Yeah.
beautiful.
Yeah, I know it, and, like, this is my 2nd chapter, well, probably had more than 2 chapters if we talk about the ones we wanna forget about. But, people and you did not say this, but I've had other people say, "Oh, you're so lucky that, you hit a certain point and you found your passion." Finance was my passion for
Mhm,
25 years. I mean, I used to help people. I used to manage people's retirement portfolios. So I'd build them financial plans and I'd help them with a roadmap to get to the point where they could retire and have the same lifestyle they had when they were working. So I was honored to be able to do that and I loved it so much. So I was building their financial independence and building my own financial independence. And so when I did the shift, it was like, man, I get 2 amazing careers back to back. This is so, so cool.
yeah. Well, it sounds like three because, or four. So you had that, then music, the book writing, the keynote speaking. Like you've had multiple careers. It's awesome.
But I think the keynote speaking and all the songs in the book are all wrapped into my mission right now, and that's to help other people be their best selves.
Mm,
I read so many books and took so many courses and learned everything there was about personal growth and peak performance over 40 years.
hmm
Some of it I did while I was in recovery, some of it I did while I was in active addiction. Like
hmm
I just read and studied that genre for decades. And so to be able to share some of the things that worked for me with other people, that's the career, that's the mission. It's like help other people, believe in themselves and give them tools because we see so many people and they're so beautiful and they're so special and they don't know it, right?
Yeah.
How do you get them to know it? How do you help them understand that, self-care and self-love is not selfish?
Mm-hmm.
And so the book and the songs and the keynotes, it's all the tool to get the message across that, there's we're all special, man. We're all special. And the fact that you missed a beat doesn't matter.
Yeah.
It does not matter. And when I talk about having a soft spot for the loved ones of the addicts. Well, the addicts themselves are the loved ones, right? Because they're in that community, whether they're going to NA or AA or whatever they're doing, they have friends that are dying. They're going to funerals,
Yeah.
and that's the real that's so so challenging. And if we talk about the parents and stuff, you said something earlier about, enabling them. I can remember thinking, I have to drive my son to his dealers to get drugs because if I don't, he might steal a car.
Mm.
Right? Like, what kind of a what kind of thinking is that? Like, that's
It's the fearful thinking where we're playing out every worst case scenario and what can I do to stop it before
yeah.
it's a worst case scenario. It's a horrific spot for a loved one to be in. They struggle just as much as the person in the addiction. And that's why I love your message, which is you got to do your life. You can't let it affect you, and you can't feel guilty or to blame for that person's path that they chose.
Yeah.
Because I
And
think
some of
also
the
families carry a lot of guilt and shame for having created this situation somehow by not being there, not giving enough love, whatever the things that we feel bad about as a loved one, that really gets magnified when you see someone struggling.
oh, yeah, and the what could I have done differently, right? That
Yeah.
whole guilt trip. And I've seen people do that that didn't even miss a beat, that were the perfect parent, perfect
Yeah.
parent And what could
Yeah.
I have done differently? Nothing. You couldn't have done anything differently. And that message that we're talking about right now, like I've had people, well, I've had a couple things. I've had somebody say to me, I took the message that you give to the loved ones of addicts, and it changed my life because my mom has dementia or Alzheimer's, and I go visit her every day. And she's very mean to me. She doesn't like me and she treats me really bad. So I stress about, but all of a sudden I realized, wait a minute, when I leave the home that she's in, I don't have to spend the rest of my day worried about her. They're taking good care of her. I don't have to spend the
Mm.
rest of my day stressing over what she just said. I mean, she's sick. She has a disease and you know, she was loving before she had the disease. I can go have fun with my family and my friends and my hobbies. And she said, you know, that context shift gave me my life back because now I can compartmentalize it. I can, and that was one of the in my book. The lady that wrote the foreword did that with cancer.
Yeah.
While the year I was writing my book, she got cancer, and I said compartmentalize instead of stressing about it all day every day. Stress about it for an hour a day, and
Yeah.
then spend the rest of the time with your grandchildren and your husband. And she said it worked. It worked. I
Yeah.
did it for the whole year. And so, yeah, that's the beauty of our brain and our mind is that we do have control over it and we can take control over it. It's hard work. We're not setting a New Year's resolution here. We're shifting our mindset,
Yeah. Well, and
right?
it is a lifelong reprogramming that we're doing. But I agree with you in the way I communicate it with people I know is like whatever you're doing, be all in on what you're doing at that moment in time. You know, don't be present, but be thinking about work. Don't be at work and thinking about home. Don't be, you know, like be wherever you're at, fully present, all in on that. And like you said, just compartmentalize it. Well, all of us have stuff that is really hard or we don't want to deal with or plagues our brain, but it takes practice to cut it out and just be in the moment of what it is that you're doing. So you can, because, you know, nobody wants to live with regrets of like, oh, you know, the whole time my kids were growing up, I was so stressed about this and worried about that. I don't even remember their childhood because, you know, I thought, you know, worrying about work all the time was the thing I should do. And it's absolutely not the thing you should do. If you're just all in on whatever it is that you're doing and then go to the next thing, I think that's where we can leave that guilt and regret behind.
I agree. I agree. That mindfulness is huge. And
Yeah.
the other thing I think is huge is to have a job that you like. Like, don't
Mm.
settle, right? I always say, go find you spend half of your waking life at work. Don't be doing something that stresses you out so much and that you hate it. Find something that you like and make that, you know, so that at the end of the day, when you're going home to your family, you got that bounce in your step. I used to come home from work and I would work like long hours. Type A personality, if you didn't notice. Little bit a little bit of an overachiever. And I would come home from work after working 10 or 12 hours, and I'd walk in the house and I'd say, honey, I'm home and I had a good day. Pour me a cold one. And oh, by the way, and we'd both start to laugh. And the cold one was usually a non alcoholic beer.
Yeah.
But like don't give your family leftovers, right? Make sure
Mm.
that you have something for that second half of your day. And the easiest way to do that is by enjoying the first half of your day. And so, you know, I've had a lot of people say, well, how do you do that? That's easier said than done. And I said, well, sit down and make a list of everything you like to do. What do you love doing? Do you love walking your dog? Do you love going to you know, playing with the kids? Do you love gaming? What is it? Do you love reading? What are you passionate about? And once you figure out all the things that you're passionate about, then what are the careers that are available in those industries? Right?
Mm.
So if you really like being around animals, because that's an easy example, because it can be anything to a part-time job as a dog walker to becoming a vet.
Yeah.
right? Or working in a pet store. There's so many things, and you can figure out what all the resources you already have are and what are the ones that you need in order to shift to that. And yeah, I do a whole chapter on don't settle, go for it, go for it. And I've
Yeah.
had so many people say, well, there's only so many jobs, and I said no, because what somebody like my son is my perfect example. He works in pest control and he loves his job. And I think, how
Wow.
the heck can you love a job in pest control? And he goes, Mom, you don't understand. I knock on the door, and the person that answers it is as white as a ghost. Sometimes it's marginal communities too. And they're all stressed out. And I say to them, hey, relax, don't worry. I'm going to be in your home for 4 hours. You're going out, I'm totally going to respect your home. And here's what I'm going to do. And I explain the whole process. And I said, and then when you come home, you have your home back. You have your peace of mind of your house that you can go to bed and you're not going to get bitten. And, he said, you know how powerful a feeling that is to give people their homes back as,
Mhm.
as their peaceful place. And I thought, wow, that's awesome, but that job would be my worst nightmare. I don't want to be anywhere near cockroaches or bed bugs. Those little critters, they freak me out, but they don't freak him, right? They don't. And so that's what I'm saying is that you could figure out what it is that would make you. I mean, obviously he didn't go through my process and find and say I want a job. But he fell into it and it turned out that it was the right one for him. And so
Yeah.
yeah, I think that's really important.
I do too. And even just flipping it from the other side, like you can tell when and I very much like to work with people who I feel a good connection with. And if I have somebody like that come to my house, like you said, it makes a bad situation really good. And my gratitude is through the roof because, they're doing something like you said, I would hate to do, and they're feeling good about doing that for you. Like what a beautiful thing. Like you said, who in a million years would have thought that pest control could bring that feeling to somebody? But that is ways to help that is so outside the box that people would not even conceive that could be a great purpose for them.
I know. I know. And we all have different personalities, right? There's 4 personality types and maybe 16 subtypes. But sometimes people will find themselves in a job that, I hate this job. I hate this job. And then if they do a personality profile test, they might find out, well, you hate the job because, you're on the front line talking to people all day long and you're an analyst. You're an
Yeah.
introvert and you love numbers and you would be great working with spreadsheets and computers and you would get so energized by it, but the job you're doing is draining you.
Yeah.
Where you take somebody that's a real extrovert and they're a promoter or a director, you can't put them in the back room with the computer.
Soul stealing.
They'll die, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, that's part of it is just going through the exercise of self-awareness, learning who we are, taking a few little steps to figure out, okay, so if this is the field I want to work in and this is my personality, then here's all the jobs that'll make the most sense.
Yeah. And how would you recommend somebody figure that out? Because, for example, my son just graduated from Baylor University in finance, and he got all the schooling, but he's doesn't have knowledge of that world to even know what would be a good fit for him, something that he could excel at or he would actually even like. He just knows I'm good with numbers and I like people.
Right. So then the next step is to do the research in that industry and say like if he's gone through college, he's probably done this personality thing test that I just talked about
Mm.
because I think that's would be part of the curriculum. I'd be surprised, but you could just go online and Google personality profile tests and they'd come up, but in that industry, and yeah, that's it, like what are the jobs in the finance industry that'll put me in the front line with people, right? And that use AI, Google that, and it'll give you the list of all the jobs because you're dead on. There's like, I was a financial advisor, so my role was to manage people's portfolios. And most of my clients were high net worth. When I retired, I think I was managing about $130 million for the top,
Wow.
and I was earning in the top 5% in North America. But guess why? I loved it. I absolutely loved it. And I cared so much about my clients. It's easy to excel at something when you're in the right place, right? And
Yeah.
so if you love people and you love numbers, you don't want to be the research analyst that works for head office in the back office and supplies people like me with the information that we want on the underlying strategies, right?
Yeah.
And so yeah, that's what I recommend for young people like that is just get online and I mean, we're in a new world now. You and I grew up without computers. Computers didn't come into play until I was 30 some years old. And then we got the internet how many years later? And so this, our kids, our grandkids grew up with computers.
Yeah.
They got the internet. Now we got AI, and AI is a whole new thing. I mean, I literally go on that AI site and say, "Could I have a marketing plan? I want to go on a 2025 book tour in Canada, and here's what I'd like to, here's my thoughts." And that thing will spew out something that I used to have to pay a fortune to get.
And took how much time in order to even develop and all that. Yeah.
Hours and hours. And so that's what I say to people when you're trying to design a new career, here's the first question to ask is, can AI do this?
Mm.
Right? Because if AI can do it, then you might want to rethink how you're doing it.
Yeah.
AI cannot replace human contact. AI cannot take over the role of a financial advisor. If he likes people and he likes working with numbers and money, maybe he's going to want to be a financial advisor. AI is not going to be able to, like the psychology of investing, when the market's correct and you're a do-it-yourself or you panic and you sell at the bottom, well, that's when you're supposed to buy, right? If clients would phone me and say, "Oh my God, the market's dropped," I'd say, "Oh, let's take some of the cash and bring our average cost down." I had a
Yeah.
few that would say, "I didn't call you when the market crashed because I knew you were going to tell me to buy more." And so yeah, so the people to people jobs, right?
Yeah.
Your job, your career, your industry, that's not going to be replaced by AI, right?
No, not
There's
at
no
all.
no, there's so many things out there that are going to be improved by AI and not replaced by it. But I tell people that are starting a career right now is to give some thought to, okay, where can I incorporate AI into this new career of mine, but not have become redundant because of it.
Yeah, that's really good advice because you're right. It is taking over. And it's like this weird, like, I think everyone's kind of nervous. I think about Terminator and stuff, and the robots are taking over. But then it is what it is. Like, you can't stop progress. It is going forward. So it's almost like a necessary thing. So use it to your advantage. Don't, be fearful of it because it, everybody's going to be using it. If you're the one that's not using it, you're going to be left behind or with less opportunities or not see things coming.
Exactly. Exactly. And I mean for now, like I use it as a research. What used to,
Mm,
I can go on there and what used to take me, 10, 15 hours to research, I can do in 15 minutes
yeah.
because it goes to all the places that I would go to research and brings the stuff back to me in
Yeah.
15 minutes. Like it's
Yeah.
crazy.
I wonder how, I mean, I don't wonder, I can already see it, how challenging that is in schools and with kids learning because everything is just right there. And for teachers to try to teach, but it's like, but I can get my answer like much quicker. Like it is definitely going to be interesting to see how this generation evolves with that tool now. Because we've seen how the generation with when the internet came around or social media, like how it sort of changed things. It's going to be really interesting to see the change that happens in people 10 years from now from this invention right now.
I know, and I thought of that too, and I think that the biggest redesign is going to be the emphasis that's going to be on the exams and the tests
Mm,
and the presentations, because who cares where you got your information? If you can write an exam and prove that you understand it all, it's in your brain, and you know the material, that's what they're trying to get to in the end anyway.
yeah.
Right? So maybe because of AI, instead of having 10 activities, you're going to have 20 activities because you're going to be pulling it together a lot quicker.
Oh,
But you
wow.
still need all that information together to do your exam. And I think they'll also use more presentations. Do stand up in front of the class, the university class, the school class, whatever, and present your findings, because who cares where you got them? If you're going to present them, you have to know them. You
Yeah.
can't get up in front of a class and present something that you don't know.
True. Yeah, you're
Right?
right. And then there it is. It comes back to the personal showing up and connection, not just behind the keyboard like producing stuff. Like you got to be in person, and that's where the human connections got to stay in.
Yeah, yeah. And I could see them teaming them up. Let's put the introvert analyst and the extrovert promoter as a team, and
Yeah.
they have to pull this whole thing together, and then let the extrovert do the one that does the acting and the standing up, and don't force the introvert into that uncomfortable spot. Like there's ways that they can, that they can do. Even when I did my MBA at university, they put 8 of us together and said, do a proposal, and then you have to put it in front of the whole class.
Hmm.
And I did the I got up and
You did the presenting?
yeah, I did the presenting. It was a national MBA, so there was people right across the
Wow.
country, and it was a big group. But yeah, I think you're right. I think that the institutions, the learning institutions are going to have to pivot, but they had to pivot when computers came around. They had to
True.
pivot when internet came around. Now they have to pivot when AI comes around. We all
Yeah.
do. That's
Yeah.
this is a change.
Yeah, and overall, it's a really positive change too. We can get things done faster as long as we take the time to stay mindful and in the moment and don't get caught up in that. That's the thing that gets me is because we're so trained for that instant gratification, which, as we know, with addiction, that's like the trigger. It's the instant gratification, whatever, or instant numbing of the pain. Like we're looking for that instant relief, and so it'll be interesting to see how that plays into addiction as well, because they almost feed that. Whereas we're trying to tell people, slow down, be mindful, be present, go through what you need to go through. Things are going to be hard. Let's not just try to get through it quickly or fast or all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and that when you say like slow down and get through it, that I noticed that like a lot of people that a lot of addicts too. I mean, sometimes it came from trauma like mine, sometimes they were just partying and they got caught, or sometimes they were self-medicating because they had anxiety or depression or ADHD. And that ADHD, that's an interesting one, because you try to go from step one to step four without doing step two and three.
Yeah.
And
Oh,
that's
yeah.
where your slowdown comes into place. Well,
Yeah.
wait a minute now. You didn't, you're trying to do love that you can see the end where you want to get to, but you got to do this, you got to do the different steps in between. And,
Yeah.
yeah, and I think you're right. I think that everybody's going to have to, uh, well, I guess this goes back to that self-awareness. If you have enough self-awareness, then you should be able to try to figure out, okay, where's the right role for this in my life?
Yeah. Yeah, it's going to be a new era of, I think, self-help, recovery, all that kind of stuff to sort of keep the basics in without trying to bypass the process.
Yeah. Without
I
trying to bypass the
just
process.
want to go to the finish line. Like I don't need to do all this other stuff in the middle. Let me just be over there.
Yeah, no, it doesn't work that way. I
Yeah.
mean, even when I use AI, like when I wrote my book, I had hired a book writer editor to work with me and to help me
Mm,
with it. And then I would, every time I finish a chapter, I'd send it to a friend or a family member and say, can you give me some constructive criticism? What should I change? And then if I was writing a chapter on something and I was not comfortable with my wording, I just pop it into AI and say, could you fix the wording of this section that I'm writing? It's too emotional or it's not emotional enough. Can you just tweak it for me? And I found that very powerful. And then sometimes after the AI tweaked it, I would tweak it again to bring it exactly to where I wanted. But so cool to be able to do that.
yeah.
That's what I think.
Yeah. I need to do more of it. I don't feel like I spend any time on it. But that's okay. I'm spending time with people, so that's my happy place. So I'm good with that.
Yeah, and that works, right? But you're right in the sense that if there's an opportunity that you have, I
Mm.
don't know, you wrote a long, lengthy email where you have to uh where like here's one I used. I had to explain to somebody that I wasn't comfortable with what they were doing. Like they
Mm.
weren't doing their job properly. And so I wrote the whole email out and then I sent it to ChatGPT and I said, okay, I'm telling this person they're not doing their job properly, but I want to empower them, not deflate them. Can you help me with the language that I used to do that? And then so oh my God, they gave me the perfect words. And when I sent it, the person
Aw.
came back after they read the email and said, wow, you're so kind and I really appreciate this. And yeah, I can go in that direction. And it was just like that. That's an example of how I used it to get through. Because sometimes I could be abrupt and my intent wasn't to be.
Yeah, or direct. And some people just yeah, you got to soften it up a little bit.
Yeah, yeah. And even, when we talked about earlier the no computer thing. So my
Mm.
mom's 94 years old and she goes on her iPad every day. And so when she read my book, she said to me, she said, I don't know how to use those little dots in the square to get to your songs, but I do know how to use YouTube. So I just went to YouTube and typed in the name of the song that I was supposed to read at the end of the chapter or that I was supposed to listen to, and I did it that way. Like,
Aw.
how amazing is that, she's using technology at that level at 94?
Yeah, that's beautiful. And critical thinking. I mean, we see a lot of decline as people get older. I'm always very proud of my grandma because she is as smart today as she's always been. Like that acumen is there. She doesn't miss a thing. It's like really amazing to see and watch.
Nice.
Yeah. So do you do personal coaching as well? Like you work with people individually or more like the group and the keynote speaking?
Yeah, the group and the keynote speaking. I mean, I don't do any individual coaching or I mentor my family whether they want it or not.
I mean, we can't help it. It's just who we are.
Uh, and so, yeah, no, I don't. I just do the groups. I speak to groups and at conferences, and I do online for corporations and deliver my message that way, but I don't do one-on-one coaching.
Do you are you did you mention that you were planning for another book now? Thinking for another one?
No, this one this one just came out like weeks ago. It came out in November. Did you see the cover of my book? I got to show you this. Look at the butterfly.
Mhm. I
I put
love
I put
that.
a treble clef and a bass clef inside the butterfly.
So
Isn't
smart.
I know, isn't that cool? Um,
Yeah.
But no, I'm going to spend all of this year, 2025, doing a book tour.
Oh,
Um,
nice.
just, sharing my message and helping. If I could help one person, that's a good thing, right? If I could
Yep.
help 100 people, that's a better thing. 1,000, like, so yeah, I'm going to spend the whole year doing touring and doing my book tour and speaking. And then in January, I turned 70. And so I'm
No
thinking,
way. You do not look 70 whatsoever. Well, 69 right now, but yeah, you do not look that at all.
no, thank you. And so, and then I think, like right now, I think, okay, so then what am I going to do for that year? For, you know, I doubt I'll ever retire. Like I did say, I'll reassess at
Same.
75. But when you're doing something that you're passionate
Yeah.
about, then that's it. It's life, right? It's part of life. And so,
Yeah.
and I take time off and I travel and I spend lots of time with my family. And I did through all my finance years too,
Yeah.
right? And you
It's
know, that's what
important.
I understand it in the field of finance, because it's a roller coaster ride. It's
Yeah.
really important to uh take your time off, take your, like I would do like minimum 6 weeks holiday a year.
Oh,
And
wow.
and then one time I hired a business coach, and I said, "Here's what I want to do. I'm taking my practice. I have a whole team. I'm going to the next level, but I'm not going to take less than 6 weeks." And he goes, "Gail, if you want to accomplish what you just said, you're probably going to have to increase your vacation, not decrease it." Right? Because that
Yeah.
downtime is when you empower, right? So
Mm.
if you work 8 weeks for 10 or 12 hours a day and then take a week off, you rejuvenate and you get strong again and you come back with a fresh and a new perspective. And so, yeah, I think that time off's really important. So, needless to say, I take a lot of it now.
Well, it sounds like it's
Always
working.
did.
As you're talking, I'm like, I really need to take like the next few days off. I've been going really hard.
Your boss is gonna say, "Who did you have as a guest?"
Well, luckily I'm my own boss, so I can
Oh,
say whatever
perfect.
I
Perfect. Your
want.
boss just approved it
Yeah,
then.
boss said, go. You need to. There's an all-star game in San Francisco. Go there with your son for 4 days.
Oh,
Enjoy. That's what my
absolutely.
brain is telling me right now.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I always say, don't think of as your downtime as anything other than an important piece of the puzzle where you're going
Mm,
to rejuvenate. That's what
yeah.
it's all about. It's all about giving you your bounce back.
Yeah. And I feel like and I'm sure there's science or God, there's something behind that, that when you're trying to push and force, it almost like pushes and forces the thing that you're trying to get away from you. Whereas you apply the right amount of pressure and then you withdraw from it, it can almost create that suction into what it is you're trying to create when you give it enough space to do so.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love the way you worded it. That's exactly, I think that's exactly how it works.
Yeah. Well, and it sounds like you've got it mastered. And I feel like culturally, a lot of countries have that way better down than like the United States. You know, the US is work, 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 work ethic, achieve, grow, get here, get here, get here. And time off is not, it's not a priority. You know, gaining and career advancement is way more important. Like the work ethic in the US is crazy compared to other countries.
I know, but I think it's still understood in some circles, because I'll give you an example in the finance
Mm,
industry. I knew a commodities trader, and they have to take a week off every 3 months. It's mandatory, but he wasn't.
mm.
He was doing that work, work, work thing. And this was back like, 20 years ago, 15 years ago. But if he didn't take his holiday on him by himself, when he walked into the office one day, his boss called him in the office and said, "You're taking the next week's off. Here's 2 tickets to Hawaii. Your wife's already at the airport. And if you so much as pick up a Wall Street Journal while you're on your week off, you're fired."
Wow.
Right?
Wow.
Like that's a real extreme definition of how important downtime is.
Yeah, I like that. Well, and what I've learned, like as I've gotten older, is if I don't give myself the downtime, something will happen to force it. You get sick, you have an accident, something happens where it forces it. And then it's not even quality downtime because now you're contending with this other thing that the sort of like God or universe or even ourselves created in order to force that downtime. So it is really important to be diligent about it.
I know, and our country is as confused about it as yours, because I'll give you a big example. Oh my
Yeah.
God, COVID. During
Mm.
COVID, the people in the health field, oh my God, I just bow down to them. I have so much respect for the nurses and the doctors and all the people that had to put up with what they had to put up with. And they weren't allowed to take any holidays and they weren't allowed to take any days off. And it made no sense to me. Wait a minute. You should be like, they're working so many long hours. You should be, every 6 weeks giving them a week off so that they can get their strength back. They can get their families time in, and then they can come back and be strong for 6 weeks instead of them all being full of anxiety and making mistakes. And,
Mm.
I knew somebody that was a paramedic and they wouldn't let any of them take any time off for a year. So everybody was so stressed out and had so much anxiety that this guy ended up taking a year off. Um, well, in Canada, we have maternity leave that goes for a year, and
Wow.
I know, and you can also make it paternity. So either one, the woman could take the year off, the woman could take 6 months, the mom could take 6 months, the father could take 6 months. It doesn't matter. So they just had a child, so he took a year off. He took a
Wow.
year off and he got strong and he played with his kids and he became a new person, and then he went back to his career. And but yeah, I don't understand how come the people that are running these industries don't have any more insight into human behavior than they do. Like, that
Yeah.
makes no sense in this day and age that they can't figure out that they could get more out of their employees if they give them time off.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, yeah, as an employer, I understand you've got to, keep things staffed up and you can't afford to have everybody gone all the time. So I know there's, that side of it as well, especially in an industry like mine where you have people with you 24/7. There's less opportunities to give people extended time off consistently. But then, like you said, the risks that we run, especially with like our counselor, is you get counselor burnout, you get compassion fatigue, you get all the things where you're pouring so much into other people that if they're not permitted to have that time to pour into themselves, then they're not effective at their jobs of being there for other people.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. And if you also have, like, I don't know, if you have a counselor that works 40 hours a week and they have to work 60 hours a week, I'm going to assume that you pay them overtime for the extra 20
Oh yeah,
hours.
that's a non-negotiable. But even some on 40 hours, I'm like, "Ah, it's a lot, but
I
at the
know.
same time,
I know,
yeah,
but if you take that 60 hours and take two counselors, instead of a two-person job, you just described a three-person job, right?
mm,
And if you ask a counselor, do you want to work 40 hours a week or 60 hours a week? I'm sure a large percentage of them said, I'll go for the 40, thank you very much.
yeah,
It's a
yeah,
high-stress job, right? So there are redesigns around. There
yeah.
are, or somebody wanting to work part-time. I think it's, my country's a lot like yours in the sense that, let's squeeze everything out of the situation that we can and the dollars that we have, and design everything in as tight of a ship as we can, when I'm sitting there and saying, but you're going to get more by doing less.
Yeah.
And so,
Yeah. Yeah, well, and
it-
I think a lot of it is just because, cost of living has gone up so much. People can't afford to work part-time. They can't afford to not, if there's an opportunity to get overtime or double overtime, they're like, I'm in on that because, then I ultimately am making more money. Like our country definitely suffers from the I just want to make more money thing. But then it's almost like we talked about, they're not their best selves because they're trying to work so hard to make the money, but then they're not enjoying, like we also talked about, they're not enjoying the process or the journey. They're just trying to get to this destination, this dollar amount, this mile marker in their lives. And so they think, the way to do that is do more, more, more.
Yeah, and I think that where we talked about earlier, having a job that you really
Mm.
like and that you're passionate about, in a lot of cases, that more and more and more becomes a non-issue because you're having fun,
Yeah,
right?
you love
So
what you're
if you're
doing.
enjoying the 12 hours a day that you're working, like my husband, I'd go to work at 7 in the morning and he'd phone me at 6 o'clock at night and say, you coming home for supper? And I'd say, what time is it? I think it was, 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And I'd say, oh yeah, I'll just wrap this up. I'll be home by 7. And so, I would just lose track of time.
Yeah.
Now, I know in different industries, that's easier said than done because your industry is much more intense. Counseling is much more intense than finance. Well, sometimes finance can be intense with the roller coaster ride of the markets. Um,
Right.
but that, if you look at even like doctors and surgeons, I used to have a lot of them as my clients,
Mm.
anesthesiologists. Those guys never worked less than 60, 70 hours a week.
Yeah.
Right, and they didn't burn out doing it. They were
Yeah.
just doing what they loved to do, what they trained to do, and, when they did have their time off, you could rest assured that they weren't managing their money. They had so little time off, they wanted to go golfing, they wanted to play with their family, they wanted to hit Hawaii, right? So they were
Skiing. Yep.
hiring me to manage their portfolios because they knew time was the commodity.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. And you're right. Like I recall, throughout all the years, the people, we always we all us old timers who've been around the industry for a long time, we're like, we used to work 12 hours a day, 6 days a week, and we just did it. Now this softer, newer generation, like a 40-hour week is like, oh my God, I'm in overwhelm and I'm burned
Right.
out. And we're like, you damn kids, you don't work like we used to. But I think therein lies the difference. If the ones that are upset or complaining about burnout are the ones that maybe that's not the right job for them, because there probably shouldn't be that feeling on a regular work week. Whereas back in the day when we were doing our 12 hours a day, we loved what we were doing. So it's just what we did. We didn't think twice about it. You're living your dream and your passion. So it doesn't feel like work.
Yeah. Yeah, and if you are in that high intense job where you're counseling and you have to do 60 hours a week, then just make sure that every 8 to 12 weeks you take that time off. Or even what you
Mm-hmm.
said, go to San Francisco to a concert for 4 days. Do whatever it is that you need
Yeah.
to do to give yourself the rejuvenation like the doctors were doing that were working 60, 70 hours a week. Find the job that you like and then make sure you're giving yourself your self-care because that's what
Yeah.
it is, right? That's the self-care part of the equation. And I have a chapter in my book on self-care and I talk about the foundation about, eating healthy, sleeping properly and exercising and
Yep.
how those three things are so important because your brain is housed in your body. And if you're eating healthy and exercising and sleeping right, man, you've just done like 90% of the work
Yeah.
because your stress level's down, your energy is up. Everything that you try to do is so much easier. It's like floating on a cloud.
Yeah.
And and so, getting those pieces in place. And I talk about diet, but nobody needs me to tell them how to eat healthy. Everybody knows that salads and fruit make more sense than fast food. It's
Yeah.
not, in our cultures, everybody knows what the definition of eating healthy is. And I'm not even saying eat in moderation. I'm just saying eat healthier foods, make better choices.
Yeah. Well, and I'm glad you clarified that, because I think a lot of people, when they hear self-care, oh, so like take a bubble bath, which it can be self-care, but I don't think people really even understand what that means when you're giving yourself the time to focus on self-care. And I like what you said, diet, exercise, foundation of taking care of yourself, your temple, your body, the thing that you inhabit. And the better we treat that, the better we feel up here in our mental and spiritual state. And so I also agree that that's a huge part of my self-care. I mean, yes, I love facials and massages and things like that, but the self-care really comes from how are we caring for ourselves for our longevity. And you mentioned, it's kind of like common sense of what healthy is, but like in our country, not so much, not in a while, because there's been so much false information about what healthy actually is or eating right actually is. And so it does take some due diligence to realize what is healthy, what is good exercise, and how do I incorporate that into my already busy and overwhelming life, where it's part of my routine, where it's not adding stress, but it's actually relieving stress and making me show up better so I'm not so tired and burned out and that sort of thing.
Right, right. And yeah, and actually I did in that chapter, I did talk about all those things you're saying, the healthy food, the exercise. If you hate going to a gym, you don't have to go to a gym. You could start with a 10-minute walk if you're doing nothing.
Yeah.
And what you said about the whole yeah, the massages. I'm a bubble bath girl. That's part of my self-care. I'll sit in the bubble bath and read a book or, you know, and
Nice.
so we'll all have something different, right? We'll
Yeah.
all have something different, but the foundation is huge. And learning a little bit about, yeah, maybe doing a little bit of homework on how to eat healthy and how to understand that you don't take your phone to bed with you at night.
Mm. Mhm, mhm.
Right?
Yeah.
Like,
The little things. Get some sunlight. Sunlight, vitamin D really helps,
yeah.
when you're feeling icky. Yeah, like when I'm in there coaching the clients, I'll ask them questions like, "Okay, guys, it's rainy, it's cold, it's dark. You guys have all coming out of addiction. This is like prime using time. What will you guys employ going forward to help you through seasonal depression or the things that can really inhibit somebody from feeling better? You're staying inside, you're not going around people. What other thing?" And of course, we're in the gym as I'm asking them. So they're all like, exercise. I'm like, yes, exactly.
And drink water. Drink lots
Yes.
of
Oh my
water.
gosh. Water is huge. Yeah, water, electrolytes, and the more water you drink, the more you got to replenish your stuff. So, um, but it's really, for me, it's really neat to help people, teach them what actually feels good and how they can feed their soul. And I really think, and I'm sure this is in your book, I don't even have to ask you, you really got to do body, mind, and soul. You can't neglect one. It has to be all three. So what are you giving yourself as far as your spirituality in your life? What are you giving yourself as far as, keeping your brain fresh and challenging and doing all the things, like looking at the whole package?
Yeah, and the piece of giving back, right? When somebody
Mm.
comes whining to me about, "Oh, I'm having a bad day and this went wrong and that went wrong," I said, "Go do some volunteer work for the rest of the day. Go to the soup kitchen and feed the homeless people some soup." Because
Yeah.
it literally, there's something called a giver's high,
Mm.
and it literally gives you that dopamine or the endorphins that you need to feel more relaxed and more happy with your own self. And so yeah, it's huge. Giving is huge. And it's like I call it an act of kindness. So you do an act of
Mm.
kindness mindfully wherever you are, whenever the opportunity jumps at you. You don't have to have money to do this. Like I was at the drugstore a couple of days ago, and this lady's walking with her little walker thing that she's pushing in front of her, and she puts all her stuff on the counter, and she goes, "Where's the Johnson baby soap?" And the guy goes, "Aisle 5." And now there's a lineup. I'm behind her and there's a lineup coming. And she goes, "Oh, I guess I can." And I said, "Hang on, I'll go get it for you." And I put a big smile on my face. I went running back and got it. And I said, "Now I brought you the small, but there was a large. Would you prefer the large?" And she goes, "Yes, please." So I run back and I get her the large and I give it to her. And she said, "Thank you." Well, you could see everybody smiling. He was happy because the people in the lineup weren't grumping because she was taking so long, and everybody, like little things like that. Just, being mindful of what's going on around you and stepping up. I just think that's part of your spirituality. That's part of,
Mm.
giving back to to the people that are in your sphere. And it's so friggin' easy, and you get as much out of it as they do.
Absolutely. Like, that's, I sometimes annoy my kids, but like I'll be in a grocery store and I'll compliment the checker for something, their hair, their style, their this, their that. And it's not fake. Like I'm just acknowledging something that I think is cool. But that one compliment could make their whole day when a lot of people just don't even see them, don't even pay attention. They're just the person that's, ringing up their food. Like little acts of kindness like that. And like you said, it doesn't cost any money. It's not disingenuous, but it can make that person's whole day because you don't know what people are going through. And one act of kindness can change everything from them. And then you're right. Then you feel better because they're like, oh, well, thank you for that. And let me tell you this. And you're like, oh, thank you. That's very kind of you.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. I think we need more of that in our culture. And
Yeah.
it would be nice if they taught it in the schools even. But, it's true. A couple of pet peeves I have up here are that they don't teach kids how to do their tax returns. Do
Mm,
they do they there?
no.
Yeah, that's
Nope.
one of my pet
Not
peeves is
even balance your checkbook.
oh, I know. That's the other one, right? Like
Yeah.
living within your means. Like you talked about everybody chasing the dollar. And one of my things, and there's a book, well, I had to put a chapter on finance in the book because,
Of course.
and one of the things that you tell, especially young people is don't use a credit card if you don't have the money in the bank to pay for it, right?
Yeah.
The credit card is there for convenience and it's there for uh, to build your credit rating, but you got to pay the whole thing off at the end of the month. Or don't use it. If you need, don't live beyond your means. Whatever your job is, find a way to pay rent and groceries and design your life within your means.
Yeah.
And if you want a more grandiose life than what you're making, then go for the raise, go for the bonus, go for the other job. Yeah, but whatever it is that you take on as a job, don't live beyond what you're bringing in because our cultures will allow you to, because there's so much predator lending out there. It's absolutely ridiculous. You get
Yeah.
20-year-old kids with like $15,000 worth of credit card debt. I mean, when I was 20-year-old, maybe they'd lend you 500 bucks on a credit
Maybe.
card, right? But
And
there was
usually they were the secured ones first. So it's only what you put in is what you could use.
yeah, yeah. I mean, there was still some responsibility on the side of the industry and not just the person. But
Yeah.
now I find they just take so much advantage of these young people and
Yeah.
give them, and expect them to have the discipline. Well, their frontal lobes aren't even completely developed yet, and you're lending them $15,000.
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah, I think that the high schools and the universities should teach people the life skill of managing their money and living within their means and filing their tax returns
Yeah.
without paying somebody to do it for them.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Yeah, that was like my favorite class when and I was fifth grade. They taught us how to balance the checkbooks, and we had like fake little checks, and we had a budget, and they taught us, like you could buy this, but you're only making that, and it was just the basics. But you're right, that is not something that is taught these days. That is hopefully the parents are imparting that knowledge. But they're maybe assuming that the school is imparting it. That's why kids go to school. So there is a disconnect there on responsible spending and earning and that sort of stuff. I totally agree.
That and the act of kindness, teach people to
Mm,
how to culture, like that's where I think there's humanitarian courses. I think
yeah,
between teaching people how to take care of their finances and be respectful of their neighbor are huge.
yeah.
And we don't teach it. We don't
No.
teach.
And how about gratitude? Like that's another one. Like, boy, like you were saying, if you hear people complaining about their circumstances, I always say, but how can you what can you be grateful from in this circumstance? And when you shift that perspective from like the victim to being grateful for whatever you're doing, it changes everything. You're no longer the effect of whatever's happening. It's like, oh, hindsight is good for gratitude because you're like, oh, that was terrible, but thank God that happened because then I could see that this and this and this happened. But you learning to be grateful in the moment, even when things really suck, that can totally change everything as well.
I know, I know. And that's what I say, design your own life, right? That's the whole premise of the message that I'm trying to give. Design your own life. Don't live the life that's thrown at you by external forces. I mean, there are things that you are not going to be able to control, absolutely. But there's so much that you can control. And so if you just design your own life, then you'll understand, and gratefulness is a big part of that. That
Mhm.
gratitude is huge. I mean, what I if you take, and you know this from your industry already, but in any field, but let's just do the field of personal growth. If you take 10 books from, the top 10 best-selling books in the field of personal growth, and you highlight the 10 ideas or tools that they gave you, and gratitude will be in that top 10. Every single book is going to have at least 7 identical. They're just going to have worded it differently.
Mm.
Like, that's why I say in my book, I didn't invent any of this stuff. I mean, this stuff has been taught since the 50s,
Yeah.
right? It was and so you learn to and sometimes we have to hear things at least 3 times before we pick up on
At
them.
least 3. Sometimes it's 7.
Yeah, sometimes it's 7. Oh, yeah, especially if it's something really hard like recovery or
Yeah.
getting away from abuse, and yeah, sometimes it takes even more than 3, but it's doable. It's
Yeah.
doable for all of us, and
Yeah.
so, yeah, I always say, "Don't worry about the past." Whatever you did in the past, you'll be able to forgive yourself for it. You'll be able to work through it. Today is the only thing that matters, right?
Mm.
Today, I'm not saying that you have to, you know, make a blackout it. You're not going to forget your past. I'm not saying forget it. I'm saying it's today and the rest of your life that
Yeah.
matter. And so we'll take the stuff that we learned in the past that's going to let us have our best life, and we'll bring it forward. We'll take the mistakes that we made and we'll learn from them and we'll leave them behind, right? But we're designing our own lives because we have the power to do that.
Yeah. Well, and you're right. And it does take retrospect to a degree so you don't repeat destructive patterns. So it's like, why does this keep happening to me? Well, look into that. Why does it keep happening to you? It keeps happening to you because you keep letting it happen to you. So let's look at changing that. So, yeah, hindsight is good and looking in the past is good to recognize patterns and routines, but it's really up to us to change those, because if we go on autopilot, we'll just keep doing that same dumb shit over and over and over again. So it really is about being mindful in the moment and choosing, not reacting to what is a different path to take, and not just what is the path we always took.
Yeah, yeah, and learning. Like, I like reading, so,
Mm.
Atomic Habits was a good one for
Oh,
breaking patterns, right?
it
But,
is.
so if something's happening to me that has happened over and over, I look up at the universe and I said, "Okay, what's the lesson you're trying to teach me that I just don't seem to be getting? Because this has happened again, and I
So,
gotta figure out how not to keep repeating this." But, lifelong learning, right? I
yeah.
talk about it in the book, lifelong learning. I don't care if you didn't finish high school. I don't care if you dropped out. You are where you are at today, and you're going to figure out how to go from here. And, whether it's reading 2 or 3 pages a day, it doesn't matter, or listening to books. You don't even
Mhm.
have to read. Right? You can listen to audiobooks. You can get them from the library here. Can you get books from the library there for pretty
Oh,
much
yeah.
no money? Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So it's available to you. You can listen. My audiobook is coming out and I did it in my own voice. So you'll get my little giggles here.
Good. Good. I hate audiobooks that are in random people's voices. Like, I want to hear from the author.
Yeah, sometimes you do, sometimes you don't. Well,
That
honest
is
to
true.
God,
You're right.
there's professional narrators, and actually the publisher that I worked with wouldn't even do an audiobook with me because they will only do audiobooks if you use professional narrators. And I said, "No, this is my story and I speak
Mm,
for a living. It has to be in my voice." It's
yeah,
like you said. Did you read that
I
or
love
listen
that.
to that Green Light book that
Matthew
Matthew
McConaughey,
McConaughey did?
love it. Love it.
I did the audio on that one, and that was
You have to, because hearing him,
yeah.
nobody could do that voice but him, and that's what makes it even better. It's the best.
Yeah, 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 it is. And so yeah, and even we're talking about, all this overtime and things that what people are experience the time crunch and I have a time management chapter, but it's all about, you can multitask. You can listen to the
Mm.
book while you're going for your walk or your jog or when you're
Yep.
on the treadmill or when you're in your car going to work. Just make sure that you only have one earpod in and not two.
Oh yeah,
You know,
I've listened to many an audible while I'm out walking my dogs. I got to walk them. I need the exercise anyway. Might as well listen to a book while I'm at it.
exactly, and this is exactly what I call designing your own life, right?
I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's just being creative and willing to do it. I like what you touched on about, sometimes we need to hear things because as long as we've been around, there's really not original thought. Like there's nothing new that hasn't, for the most part, that hasn't already been thought of, said. But sometimes you need to hear it in different ways, in different forms, in different voices, and at different parts in our life. Like I'll go back, like, oh, I loved that book when I was a teenager. I'm going to reread it again. Like, why did I really love that? And then to reread it in a new phase of my life, and it's the same book but it just hits differently. So I am a huge fan of the multiple times over to really get it in many different ways. And so it should never prevent people like you or I from expressing our thoughts, because it might resonate with people that, hearing Think and Grow Rich that was written in the 50s would never resonate with, but when they hear us talking about it and applicable to today's times and in our lives, it makes more sense.
Yeah. Yeah. And then the other piece to that too, with what you just said, is limited beliefs, right? Because people
Mm.
think, okay, I tried, I can't, I'll throw out an idea. Maybe you should, no, I tried that, 5 years ago and it didn't work. So no, because it's not because you tried it 5 years ago doesn't mean it won't work today, right? The circumstances 5 years ago could have been different. The people you were talking to would be different because it didn't work last time. It's not a fact that it won't work this time.
Yeah.
And so if you can get rid of the limited beliefs and think about, well, why wouldn't I try that? Like you tried going back to school 5 years ago and it didn't work, so can't go back to school. Well, maybe 5 years ago you were still in active addiction. And
Right.
you're not now, right? Other circumstances, you're older, you're wiser, you're more settled, you're more mindful. Like anything could be different. And so it understanding that limited beliefs aren't facts.
Yeah. It's hard to find them though. Do you have tools on locating limiting beliefs? Because, a lot of times it's very ingrained in and you don't even realize they're there unless you happen to say something that somebody notices and they point it out to you.
Yeah, so my tool that I use is the internal dialogue one. And that's where because that's where it starts, right? So I'll
Mhm.
give you an example. I mean, once I took control of my internal dialogue, it literally changed my life. So I'm going to just sort of give you a little example that I use. Okay, so there's a proposal for a speaker on a conference, and I start to fill it out, and I realize, whoa, this is a really big conference. So I say, okay, well, there's no use me filling out this proposal because this level of clientele of attendees, they're already going to know everything that I have to say. They're already going to have heard my message, and there's going to be so many powerful speakers that are way more advanced than me that are going to be applying for this, and why would they pay the fee that I'm asking for? So there's the internal dialogue, the limited belief that I'm not the right fit. So then I go, garbage in, garbage out. That's my mantra. Garbage in, garbage out. I yell it. Hopefully you're not on the street because people will look at you. But even in the car, I'll yell it, garbage in, garbage out. And then I'll rephrase it and I'll say, oh my God, I just stumbled upon this perfect proposal. I've got the perfect message for these people. Even if they heard it before, we've just talked about it. You got to hear it over and over again. I'm going to be sharing my stories and giving them some new ideas that they haven't been, and wow, my fee's perfect for this. And so talk about a win-win, right? Let's
Yeah.
get going on this proposal. So now that's the marathon, to get your brain to do that. That's not the sprint, right? It'll take you, if you're doing the negative thinking right now all the time with that limited belief, to get control of your internal dialogue is going to take you months of training. Think
Yeah.
about it as you're training for a marathon and you're not a jogger. So the first time you go out, you jog a little bit and then a little bit more, and you train yourself for a year and a half and then you run your marathon. Well, it's like that with your brain, right? If
Mm.
we're rewiring our brain and we're reshifting it, it will take time. So when you catch it, like you said, sometimes you don't even catch it, somebody else catches it and brings it to your attention. But if you're wanting to shift it, you'll start, all of a sudden you'll start, hey, wait a minute, that was one of those negative thoughts. And you use your own, like I say, garbage in, garbage out. I read a book in the 70s by Gail Taylor, and she was a long distance runner, and that's the words that she used. And I thought, I'll just steal her words, they'll work for me. Right? Or a
Yeah.
tactile item. I actually made a line of pendants that I
Mm.
tell people to wear or to put in their pockets, right? This one says staying young on it. And it's a tactile item because you can scratch the engraving and
Yeah.
use it to help you shift your mind. I mean, people that go to the NA programs, they get those chips,
Chips.
right?
Yeah.
Use your chip in your pocket to be the tactile item, and to go along with it. And once you get really good at that, your
Yeah.
subconscious mind gets the message.
Yeah.
Oh, we create what we want, right? We believe in ourselves. We create what we want. So then when you tell your subconscious mind, this is what I want, or your conscious mind, the subconscious mind says, yeah, we know how to do this, we've been doing it for a while now, and you don't have to think about it anymore. Like that
Yeah.
example that I gave you, I had to make that up, right? I would never look at a proposal and say it's not for me. I mean, I'm realistic. If it's not for me, then it's not for me. If they're looking for a scientist to talk about something scientific, then they don't want a motivational speaker. So,
Yeah.
common sense does prevail. But
Yeah.
but taking control of your internal dialogue and doing that, the glass is half full thing instead of half empty, is a huge game changer.
Huge. Yeah, I love that. And it's self-awareness. It's, being with your mind and being aware of what's being said and not letting it run you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah, I love, and I'm sure you know Joe Dispenza and the neuroplasty. It just for me that resonated so much. Like and like you were saying, so you got some bad habits and you got some limiting beliefs, and it's not serving you. So let's reprogram and rewire your brain chemistry, your heart coherence into something that's more positive, and turn it into. Well, why wouldn't I get that job? Of course, I'm the best person for it. And there is an element of fake it till you make it, maybe you don't believe it in the
Absolutely.
beginning, but then you start doing it and saying it, and then you start believing yourself, and then everybody else is believing it, and then you are creating that new reality. You are redesigning your life, like you said.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Fake it till you make it.
I've
You
done
can
that
do
on many occasions.
Yeah, yeah, for sure, for sure. And if something didn't work at one time, it doesn't mean it's not going to work at another time. And if somebody's not buying into what it is that you're approaching them with, that's okay. It just means it's not for them. It's not
Yeah.
for them, or it's not for them at this point in time. If that conference came back and said, no, Gail, we're not going to hire you, thank you very much, it's not personal. I'm not going
Yeah.
to take it personal. It's because somebody else applied that's a better fit for that group, and that's all there is to it. It was the same when I worked in finance or even in music. If somebody doesn't like my songs, well, that's okay. Everybody's taste isn't the same. And
Yeah.
so, that you just have to understand that it's not personal, right?
It's
Even
not
if
personal.
somebody says something really personal to you, like, oh, you better not go apply for that course or apply for that job because you don't have the right skills for it. And like they might mean well, but that just means they have limited beliefs. And that's don't take it personally. It's not like they're trying to slow you down because they don't like you. They just that's their reality and it doesn't have to be yours and you don't have to be the victim. Oh, my friend's so mean. No, they're not. Your friend's your friend. They have their beliefs and they have their skill set and the more you grow, the
Mm.
more it can scare other people, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because
Mm-hmm.
it's just like drugs, right? You're going to have people that love you that you used to party with want you to party with them again.
Yeah.
They're losing you. They're losing you to your sobriety.
Yeah.
And and that's okay, right? The fact that they're at the place they're at, like I always say, don't take it personally. They're where they are and you're where you are. And I mean, they do say that you're the average of the five people you spend your most time with. So choose who you spend your time with. I mean, I've
Yep.
been spending my time with a lot of wonderful people like you that host podcasts, and I've been loving every minute of it because you guys are just great. You're getting
Oh.
such nice messages out there, and I think that's amazing. And I'll find like if I think, okay, I like Paul McCartney. So if I want to spend a little bit of positive time with somebody that stayed with his career for years, I'll put on YouTube and I'll watch a Paul McCartney interview and I'll
Mm.
pretend I'm there, right? I'm hanging with Paul today. Right? So if you don't have that inner circle right now
Yeah.
that you want to have, create it.
Yeah.
Create it. It's not that hard, so yeah, I think it is important that we make some conscious decisions who we
Mm.
give all our time to because we discussed time's a commodity.
Yeah. And I love that creativity because I think a lot of people, especially in new recovery, they're like, but I don't have any friends. When I leave rehab, I don't have anybody like me. I'm going to have nobody to hang out with. I'm losing a lot. And it's all about creating and it's not abundance. It's more like quality. So who is like you and who's going to challenge you and who's going to help you get better and who's going to hold you accountable. Like you said, put those as your five people. You don't need a huge group, but you just need the five people. And one thing that I've noticed, even in recent years, and you mentioned on this too, is as you grow, those people will change because not everybody's growing at the same rate as you. Everybody's not experiencing the same things as you. And that's okay. People are here for a season, a reason, or a lifetime. It doesn't mean like just because they were your best friend in third grade, they have to stay your best friend the rest of your life because as you grow, you might not be aligned anymore. And that's okay. I love your idea about put on your hero on YouTube. You're not alone.
Yeah.
Listen to that. There's your group. You're fine. Like it's okay to have that as your five people that are close to you.
Well, yeah, or listen to podcasts. Find your favorite
Mm.
podcasts because there's no question that, there are so many. I'm finding so many wonderful hosts like you that,
Oh,
all they have to do is just, spend their time listening to people that are on the same path as they're on.
yeah. I love that. Gail, you've been so amazing to talk to. I appreciate you so much. And thank you for taking your time and coming on the show today.
Oh, I love that you have me. And can I tell people where they can get my book?
That was my next question. Please tell everybody where they can find you, where they can get the song, get the books, get the audibles, book you for their conferences. Give us all the deets.
Okay, so the number one easy peasy is I have a website. So gailtaylormusic.com, and Gail is spelled Gail. So gailtaylormusic.com, and then from there you can find all my my Instagram, my Facebook, my everything you want. If you want to buy the book and not go to my website, wherever you stream, so Amazon, Barnes and No, or not stream, but wherever you buy online. So Amazon, Barnes and Noble. I mean, Amazon seems to be the greatest one because you get it in 3 days.
It's amazing. Everything.
I
It's so
know.
quick.
I know. It's just like 1
With
minute.
free shipping.
Yeah. And they drop ship.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
they print it after you put in the order. They print the book and drop it off at your doorstep in 3 days. Isn't
Amazing.
that wild?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's, yeah. So Amazon or Barnes and Noble, or if you want to, like, as far as me as a keynote speaker, just go to my website and you'll find all the, you'll find a link to my agent. You'll find everything there.
Awesome. And we'll put all the links in the bio and to your song and all that, so that it's easy for listeners that are listening and watching on their computers and whatnot.
And there's a lot of books about called Curveballs. Mine is the one that's not about baseball.
Ah, ah, very
It's
good point. Yours
actually,
has the beautiful butterfly on it.
yeah, and it's actually got a subtitle. I think there's another one with a butterfly on it too. The subtitle is Unlocking Your Potential Through Personal Growth and Inspirational Music. Right?
Oh,
And so that's because that's a big part of it, is that there's a soundtrack in it.
I love that. And you're right. Music, it hits me. I'm not a musician, but I love music. I think music therapy is like the best thing ever. I'll just let YouTube play me songs and I process stuff, but I love music. I think it just hits our hearts in a different way than just spoken word or reading or any of that.
I know it does, right? It does. Sometimes it makes us laugh, sometimes it makes us cry, makes
Yeah.
us dance. It just has so much power. And
Yeah.
yeah, I think finding your place in music is important.
Yeah. Awesome.
Oh, well,
Thank you
thank you
so
so much
much for
for having me, Angie.
absolutely. Have a fantastic, what are we on, Wednesday? And if you ever need anything, reach out. I'm always
All right.
here.
All right. Thank you so much.
All right. Thanks, Gail.
Bye.
Bye.